Thank you very much for joining the Delta E Hybrid Heat Pumps in Europe webinar. And today we're going to be looking at why we think hybrids could be a key piece in the decarbonisation puzzle. So I'm just going to introduce who's on the webinar today. I'm Lindsay Sugden. I'm head of heat at Delta EE. So I've been working in the energy and particularly the heating space for about 13 years, and with a focus on heat throughout. And I lead the consulting and research services that we do around heat. I'm going to introduce you to my colleague, Kate Lyon. Kate, do you want to say a few words?
Yep, thanks, Lindsay. Morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Yes, my name's Kate Lyon. I work at Delta along with Lindsay on the subject of heat, and I manage our electrification of heat research service, which looks at how the markets are developing across Europe for electric heating, often focused on heat pumps, but also looking at other electric technologies. And I've been at Delta for about 6.5 years now, and prior to that worked in energy efficiency and renewables at the Energy Saving Trust.
Okay, I can see we've got a question asking if it's very quiet. I think people are hearing us now. It was perhaps quiet when you first joined. I hope you can hear us. If anybody is having problems, then please say so in the chat, and we'll show you how to do that in a second. Kate, do you want to introduce the agenda of what we're going to talk about today?
Yes, no problem. So we're going to go for about 45 minutes today in total. We appreciate everyone's busy and has other things to be getting on with, so we thought we'll keep to 45 minutes, keep it short and sweet. Lindsay and I are going to look to talk for about 30 minutes, and then we'll make space for questions at the end for about 15 minutes. We will also be taking questions throughout. There's a slide in a moment that shows you how to submit questions if you have them. It would be great to get questions from you. We're very interested to hear your views on this topic and your reactions to what we're going to tell you about today. If we don't get round to your questions on the webinar itself and the questions at the end, then we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible after the webinar. So the topic for today is a very interesting one for us. It's hybrid heat pumps. So we're going to run you through why we're talking about hybrids, setting the scene of the challenge that we're all trying to meet around decarbonising Europe's heating. Then we'll run you through our definition of hybrids, talk about some of the benefits that we see hybrids bringing in terms of overcoming pain points. We'll present to you some research we've recently completed sizing the hybrids market in Europe, and also we forecast where we think the hybrids market is going to grow in the future. We'll share some of those findings with you, and we'll wrap up with why we think hybrids could be a key piece of this big decarbonisation puzzle and challenge.
Thanks, Kate. Shall we move on to explaining how the webinar works?
Yes, that is a good point. So yes, everyone who's joined the webinar, some of you will be familiar with GoToWebinar software, others won't be. For those of you who aren't, if you have questions, you should be able to see on your dashboard on the right-hand side a grey box that says questions, and underneath you should be able to enter a question, and then if you send it privately, it'll come to myself and Lindsay, and like I say, we'll try and take questions throughout. We'll have some time at the end, and if we don't manage to get to your question, we'll get to you afterwards. So yeah, hopefully all straightforward. And as Lindsay said, if you're having any issues, either drop us a question or pop out the chat box. I can see someone's asked a question if the slides are going to be available. Yes, we will share the slide deck afterwards with attendees, and this recording will also go up on our YouTube channel, and we'll send a link around to that afterwards.
And just to check, Kate, have you started the recording?
Yes, I have. Thank you for asking.
Just had to be sure. Okay, yep. Thanks very much, Kate. So many of you on the webinar today will be familiar with Delta, with Delta EE. For those of you who don't know Delta EE, we're a research and consulting business, and we help our clients to navigate the energy transition. Our focus is very much on the demand side of the energy system, and we look across many areas, and the areas mentioned here around EVs and electricity, flexibility and energy storage. distributed power, digital energy, and heat in the centre there. So our clients include the HVAC industry, energy industry. We do work for network companies, new entrants to the energy space, policymakers, a whole range of clients. Heat is at the heart of what we do. It's the longest running research area we've had in Delta. And within heat, we help our clients in 4 different ways. We have 3 subscription services around electrification of heat, gas heating, and heating business service, and then we also do consultancy. So most of the research that we're going to draw on today in our webinar has come from research around these 2 areas, around electrification of heat and gas heating service. Hybrids really bridge this gap. So if you just switch slides, Kate. Yes. Our heat research explores what we see as the transition to new heat. We see these 6 key market disruptions shaping the market. So the transition to low carbon, connected technology, tightening of policy and regulations, driving decarbonisation, new competition, new competitors entering the market, new product to customer journey, changing customer propositions, and the end user's role changing as well. So hybrid heat pumps are a solution which is really influenced by and driven by many of these disruptive trends. So this is the context in which we look at hybrids. So in this webinar, we're going to assess why we think hybrids can play a key role in or can be a key piece in the decarbonisation puzzle. I'm going to then hand back to Kate, and we're going to start off with a quick poll to get everybody on their feet.
I think we were going to do the what's a hybrid heat pump introduction first.
Apologies, sorry, Kate. Yes, first of all, we're going to talk about what hybrid heat pumps are, just so that everyone's on the same page.
Yep, just very quickly for you, because the definition of a hybrid does vary depending on who you ask, between different countries, different associations, different organisations. When we talk about hybrids at Delta, this is what we mean. We're always talking about a heating system in a residential property which provides heating and often hot water as well, where there are 2 heat generating technologies, one an electrically driven heat pump and the second a boiler that operates on gas or liquid fuels. And these 2 appliances have a shared control, which then determines which appliance works to provide the heating. And obviously there can be different priorities set up around that control, whether it's for minimizing running cost, maximizing CO2 savings, taking advantage of different energy prices. But the key thing for us is there always has to be a shared intelligence or shared control across these 2 systems. And it does cover quite a wide variety of different physical appearances, different technologies, from integrated units where you have parts of the heat pump and the boiler all together in one physical box, sometimes with an outdoor unit, sometimes without an outdoor heat pump unit, sometimes just the air coming into the unit via vents. It covers units that are floor standing, units that are wall hung, different levels of integration, and it can also just look like a heat pump added on to an existing boiler. So like I say, when we talk about hybrids at Delta, we're really talking about all these different kinds of technology, and as long as it has an electric heat pump and a boiler and there's a shared control between the 2 of them. So yes, we wanted to just quickly, like Lindsay says, get you all on the same page. This is what we mean at Delta when we talk about a hybrid. And yes, and then we're going to do a quick poll, as Lindsay said, to get you on your toes and make sure you're all awake this morning. So yeah, Lindsay, I'll hand over to you to introduce it.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So some of you will already be familiar with hybrid heat pumps, I'm sure. Some of you perhaps less so. So we'd like you to start off by taking a shot in the dark and tell us when you think the peak opportunity for hybrids will be, whether it will be in the short term, the medium term, or the long term. So Kate's going to launch a poll here, and you should have something popping up on your screen where you get to choose whether you think it will be next 5 years, next 10 years, or a much longer term role.
Good, we can see quite a number of people are voting. That's great. Great to have the engagement. We thought as well we'd ask you this towards the end as well to see if see if your opinion changes based on what we present as we go through today. So most people have voted. I'll just keep it going for a few more seconds. Last chance to get your votes in, if anyone still wants to. Okay, I think that's probably most people have voted who are going to, so I'll just close that and share the results with you.
Okay, so medium, sales will peak during the next decade seems to be the most popular response. A few of you a bit more pessimistic, a few of you a bit more optimistic, so that's a nice spread. It's perhaps always easiest to choose the middle option as well. But thanks very much for that. And as I said, as Kate said, we'll ask you this again at the end. Right, Kate, we just switch on to the next slide.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so just to set the scene, one of the reasons why we think hybrids could be a key piece in the decarbonisation puzzle is that they offer a promising solution in one of the most challenging parts of the heating market, and that's the existing building market, particularly on the gas grid, but also off. So just to kind of set the scene, why is this market so challenging? So that this chart that you're seeing is looking at the 5 biggest heating markets in Europe and how they're made up in terms of proportion of different heating systems. It won't be news to anyone that the market's very much dominated by fossil fueled boilers, especially natural gas boilers. Low carbon alternatives, including electric heat pumps and high efficiency gas solutions like micro CHP, fuel cells, gas heat pumps, and others have so far failed to really make an impact, particularly on the gas grid. There's a lot of technology options out there, a lot of low carbon alternatives, but none of them has made a really significant impact on the gas grid. And why do we think this is? Well, there's a number of pain points in the market. Natural gas boilers are, of course, relatively cheap to buy and to run. They're popular with end users and with installers, so it's quite hard to shift people away. Overall heating system replacement rates are very low, so any change that does happens at very slow pace. Another challenge could be that many buildings are old and leaky with high flow temperature requirements. While this doesn't preclude low carbon solutions, they're not always the ideal conditions for low carbon solutions, and people may shy away from taking the switch. In some regions as well, electricity grid weakness is causing problems when switching away from, for example, from gas to full electrification. And these kind of problems could become much more significant going forward. And a final point is that political support for decarbonisation in on-gas grid areas is, for example, through incentives, has really failed to drive significant change to date. One exception may be the French market, where we've seen heat pumps beginning to displace some gas boilers, but generally we're not seeing a big change so far. And there's not really a clear consensus on any one single action which could really solve this problem. So hybrids could be one of the answers to this. There's 4 main reasons why we think hybrids may address some of these pain points. The first point here, offering a wide range of solutions for existing buildings. So there are so many configurations of hybrids on the market. Kate just showed a few pictures of some of them in the introduction. There are solutions which could suit a wide range of existing buildings as a result. This includes buildings with, for example, high flow temperature requirements, which can be challenging for some other low carbon solutions. And while there are advancements in, for example, high temperature electric heat pumps, the evidence from the market today suggests that being able to more easily meet high flow temperature requirements is one key selling point for hybrids at the moment. The second area around tackling end user challenges. So typical challenges from end users include that low carbon solutions are too expensive to run, they're unfamiliar, so generally not trusted as a heating solution. You know, people really like their boilers. Hybrids have the potential to overcome some of these challenges. They generally have a lower price point than other low carbon solutions, not as low as a gas boiler, but they tend to be a bit lower priced. I think the most important point is that end users are potentially more comfortable with a low carbon solution, which includes a gas boiler, for example, which they're familiar with. And we've seen this on the market both with homeowners and with building developers in research that we've done, that hybrids offer a solution where you can switch to a bit more of a low carbon solution but still have the backup of the familiar technology. I think this will be a transitional step, potentially towards moving more away from boilers in the future. But this is how the market is today. The third point is around managing electricity grid capacity. So many hybrids are being installed today where the electricity grid is weak, and the cost of upgrading the grid to install, for example, a pure electric system can be off-putting. The ability to switch between electricity and gas or oil offers significant flexibility potential to manage peaks on the grid, for example. And in the long term, this flexibility for the energy system will become more valuable. And then finally, as I said, there's not a clear decarbonisation direction from policymakers. Is it going to be electrification? Is it going to be low carbon gases? Hybrids leave options open for both of these options. So this is a big selling point. I think the two final points around the electricity grid impact and the keeping multiple decarbonisation options open, these are two of the more unique selling points of hybrids, and it's one of the reasons that we think we're seeing so much interest from the industry. Many players are launching products, nearly all of the main heating companies in Europe with a hybrid product on the market. So despite the fact that sales aren't huge, and we're going to talk about that in a second, they've had a lot of attention, and I think this is why. So I'm going to hand over to Kate, who's going to talk a bit about what the state of the market is at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, so Lindsay's done a nice summary there of kind of the challenges that exist in terms of moving existing fossil fuel heated homes over to low carbon technologies, and why we think hybrids could be a key solution for some of those homes. Not the only solution, obviously, but we do think they could play a good role. We wanted to assess how many hybrids are being sold at the moment. This is a number that we get asked for quite a lot, because it's quite easy, we found, for people to find numbers for boiler sales and for electric heat pump sales in the main heating markets. But finding a number for hybrids, when hybrids covers a lot of different technologies, it's obviously quite hard for a lot of people, because this is a question that has been coming to us quite a bit over the last couple of years as well. How big is the hybrids market at the moment, given that this technology could be a good solution for the future, and for homes now? So we did some research over this summer where we gathered data from the main manufacturers, from associations, and we came up with a figure of 32,000 units being sold per year across the 5 main heating markets that we cover. So that's Italy, Germany, Netherlands, France, and the UK. So 32,000 maybe doesn't sound like very much overall, but if you think about the entire electric heat pump market last year, which was around 350 to 400,000, that means hybrids are 5 to 10% of the electric heat pump market. So that's a reasonable share, actually. And as Lindsay said, hybrids are a part of the portfolio for many of the major manufacturers. In terms of where they're being installed at the moment, then again, this was a key question people asked us, well, where is this technology finding traction today? We found that the majority of hybrids at the moment are going into the retrofit sector across these markets. And in terms of what they're either being installed alongside or what they're replacing, the majority are going into the on-gas sector at the moment. So that's how the market looks. And in terms of the reasons for that, so what are the drivers behind that? So in certain markets, it is about new build regulations. So that's some of the new build on gas. In Italy, for example, where new build regulations call for a minimum percentage share of renewable energy, a hybrid system involving some form of gas boiler and some form of electrically driven heat pump is quite a popular solution to meet those regulations. There's increasing pressure in many markets on the use of oil in particular. So Lindsay mentioned France already. France is a market where heat pumps are gaining traction in many segments, so both on gas and off gas, and that's true of hybrids as well. And the French government over the last year, 18 months, has been bringing out lots of new decrees around when you can and can't replace an oil boiler, and they're even talking about banning oil boiler sales from 2022, but oil hybrids will still be allowed. So the push to reduce oil use, the sort of negative press that's happening around oil, so the fact that we have a carbon tax being introduced in Germany as of early next year, which is going to raise the price of heating oil, and there's additional regulations in Germany as well around oil heating in terms of environmental protection. This is really raising customer interest in moving at least some of their heating over to a non-fossil fuel source. We've seen government subsidies increase, I think, over the last few years. Traditionally, 3-4 years ago, maybe hybrids weren't mentioned in government subsidies or they weren't eligible. We've seen that turn around in a lot of the markets over the last few years. So very generous subsidies now for hybrids in particularly France, particularly Germany, and hybrids often name checked in the regulations as specifically being an eligible technology and something that governments are increasingly looking to promote or give people the option to install. And finally, we've seen some interesting new business models popping up around hybrids. We think hybrids could be a very good solution for people in the future who want to, or businesses in the future who want to provide households with a low carbon option, but that will ensure that they have heating and they can switch between fuels. They can keep the running costs low. So there's some good examples in the UK market at the moment of energy suppliers offering hybrid heat pumps at reduced upfront cost to take advantage of some of those government subsidies. So that's the market at the moment, and there's more detail in our report on this for those of you who subscribe at the moment to either our gas heating service or our electrification of heat service. Looking forwards, where do we think the market is going to grow? So the other thing we did in the report was to look at how those drivers are shaping up and where we think the market could be headed over the next few years. So where are hybrid sales going to grow? I mean, basically everywhere, to be a little bit glib, across all the markets that we, like I say, that we looked at, the 5 main heating markets. We think sales of hybrids are going to double over the next 5 years. So the total market could be around 65,000 units in 2025. But the picture's quite varied. There's quite a lot of subtlety between the different countries. And the markets that are the biggest markets today won't necessarily be the biggest hybrids markets by 2025. Just to give you some quick examples, Germany is obviously known today as a big electric heating market. We have found it's also actually one of the bigger hybrids markets today, mostly thanks to units being installed alongside existing oil boilers or integrated units replacing oil boilers. And the big driver for this has been the MAP subsidy, which was reformed in January this year. It's providing more generous support to all kinds of heat pumps, but including hybrids. The whole heat pump market is probably going to be up this year compared to previously. And part of this benefit is definitely going to filter down to hybrids based on what we know about the market. The other interesting part about this is, as part of the MAP subsidy, you can now have a subsidy for a new gas boiler if you're a German householder, as long as you add on a renewable heating technology alongside that within the next 2 years. And take up of this has been huge. Tens of thousands of people have applied for this funding. And one of the options to make these gas boilers renewable in the next 2 years is adding on a hybrid heat pump. There's other options as well, like solar thermal, which obviously some households will go for, but we think that as well could be a big boost to the market. And as I've already said, there's also the introduction of a carbon tax from early next year. It's going to affect both gas and oil, with higher levels on oil, and that's going to ramp up as we go towards 2025, which we think again is going to encourage people to assess their home heating and see what they could change to instead of just having a boiler. And then, in contrast, another market at the moment which is quite big is Italy. So Italy probably is the largest hybrids market according to our research at the moment in Europe. This one is, as I say, largely driven by new build regulations. So we think that going forwards for the next 5 years, it's probably safe to assume that hybrids will continue to be a good solution in new build, but ultimately we think the market will shift over towards more electric solutions. So to 2025, probably some increase in sales into new build, which is going to help to raise the market a little bit in Italy. But new build, we don't see a significant amount of growth happening in new build. On the renovation side, so people putting hybrids into existing homes, there's a new subsidy in Italy, which is called the super bonus. It's an enhancement of the previous eco bonus. And this is going to be around, we think, likely until 2023, which gives households refunds of up to 110% on the cost of a new heating system or a new home improvement like insulation, which is a very generous amount of funding, and we think this will help to boost the hybrids market a little bit in Italy, but there are quite a lot of strings attached in terms of how much you need to improve the overall building energy performance by. So again, a boost to the market, but not enormous. So like I say, just to give you a flavour of a couple of the markets that we assessed in our report, and yeah, to bring home the point that it does vary by market. The drivers and barriers are different per market, and therefore overall we see hybrids growing, but there is variation within the different markets. So yeah, I think I just wanted to give you those two examples, and now it's back to Lindsay to talk about future developments and where we see the opportunity for hybrids being maybe a little bit more long term than that. Lindsay, I'm going on to the next slide. I can't hear you at the moment, but I wonder if you're muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Never good. Okay, thanks, Kate. So I'm going to talk about what we think the outlook is. We're going to start off by looking at where we see the kind of immediate opportunity. Actually, Kate, if you could also click again to the next. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so why are hybrids being sold today? We've talked about this. They're being sold into new build where they can meet building regulations. They're being sold into retrofit where they're eligible for incentives. They're being sold into retrofit where there is, for example, high flow temperature requirements. And they're being sold into retrofit in areas where the electricity grid has potential capacity issues. Going forward, we do see things changing. The new build regulations, there's been a lot of talk about gas bans and so on. New build regulations are likely to move away from hybrids, so we think that the window of opportunity for hybrids and new builds is fairly short. Availability of incentives, we think that the hybrids will continue to grow in retrofit as a result of incentives, but post 2025 and towards 2030, the support level is not certain. The point around the high flow temperature requirements in buildings with high flow temperature requirements being a place where heat pumps, hybrid heat pumps, are being installed at the moment. This will still happen, but I think the further forward we go, the more other solutions will be available for this. So while we think this is it's a target segment at the moment, getting closer to 2030, this may get smaller. One of the longer opportunities at the moment, which we see continuing, is those areas where there's grid capacity issues. This could still be a longer term opportunity for hybrids. But what could extend this value, this window even further? I think there's two key points there. One is around this value of flexibility in the energy system. So the value of offering flexibility to the energy system will grow going forwards, and if hybrids can enable this value to be captured through switching between electricity and the other fuel, the window of opportunity there for hybrids could be long. Another element which could potentially extend the window is as the gas grid gets greener, be it through hydrogen or through biomethane, hybrids become more attractive as a carbon saving measure, so may get more incentives from government and so on. So I think there's in a real kind of wild card scenario, if hybrids are the best solution for capturing value from flexibility, and in a world where the gas grids, natural gas grids today are very much converted to hydrogen or biomethane, you could have a very long window of opportunity for hybrids. Of course, there's big ifs there, but this is how we see the key points affecting what the outlook could look like. We're going to run one more poll again. We're going to ask you the question which we asked at the beginning, to see if you have changed your opinion at all. We'll be very happy to see if people still have the same opinions or if we've shifted anything. So let's run this poll again. More interesting to see what you all think.
Yeah, Lindsay, just to recap, last time it was about half people voting for medium and then a fairly even split between short term and long term, wasn't it? Let's see how things are panning out this time. Okay, most people have voted. We'll leave it open for a few more seconds if anyone else wants to get their vote in. Okay, I think we'll close it there. Seeing as it was the same poll as last time, I think everyone was familiar with the options. Close that down and share the results with you all. And yeah, pretty similar actually.
Well, thanks very much, everybody, for doing that. We'll pop those into the slides, which will be made available afterwards. I think we're gonna wrap up by giving our view of this. I think just reflecting those questions which we asked you in the poll. I think our feeling is that the answers really, all of the answers are correct, but it really depends on the segment. Hybrids are already decarbonising heat today, but critically, I think we see hybrids offering an opportunity to decarbonise the challenging on-gas retrofit sector going forward. So for new builds, sales may peak, in the next few years before 2025. The off-gas retrofit segment, we can see sales peaking in the late 2020s. On-gas retrofit sales could peak around 2030. Beyond 2030, if hybrids enable this flexibility value, which I talked about, and they prove to be an efficient way to use green gas with hydrogen, biomethane, etc., then the growth could could continue, and we could see hybrids being part of the energy transition beyond 2030 as well. That's everything that we're going to talk about, and we're going to take some questions now. You can see there's been a lot of questions being asked. So where are we? So we've got a question here: are switching data services available to maximize automatic hybrid interactions with electricity and heating oil market prices? So I think, yeah. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll have a first pass at that, Lindsay, and then if there's additional things that you want to add, please do. Yeah, that's a really good question. And for us, the more this is available, this ability for hybrids to access varying energy prices as they change, and certainly as we see more dynamic time of use electricity tariffs coming along, the more that's going to be an advantage for hybrids. In terms of, is it available at the moment? Yes, it is possible. At the moment, there's often additional technology needed beyond the standard intelligence that comes in a hybrid heat pump to optimize the running between the two parts. At the moment, you often need an additional bit of kit and some additional software to allow it to pick up those dynamic changes in prices. Most hybrids, you can already program in static energy prices. So you can say, this is my average electricity price, this is my average oil or gas price, and the unit will decide what's the most efficient appliance for you to run to achieve whether you want lower running cost or lower carbon. In terms of, like I say, accepting those dynamic prices, at the moment you often need an add-on piece of kit, but this is something that we know a lot of heat pump manufacturers are looking at making more standard and setting up things like APIs or using common communications protocols to enable the units to pick up these dynamic prices if the energy supplier wanted to send them to them. So yeah, we see that becoming more common in the future. And I think heat pump manufacturers are already looking quite a lot at making sure even pure electric heat pumps can respond to those changing energy price signals in the market around making sure that heat pump running cost is reduced, or allowing heat pumps to be used flexibly so that some of the challenges around electrification of heat to the electricity networks and to upstream generation can be managed. So that's filtering through into the hybrids market as well.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, see another question here. So someone has asked, I can see how replacement of gas boilers with hybrids will have a significant impact on carbon emissions in the medium term. In the longer term, could it be a drag on domestic and commercial users moving to fully electric heating and hence hinder fuller decarbonisation? I'll maybe take a first pass at this. Yes, we see hybrids decarbonising at the moment, and with a window to continue to do that in the medium term. I can see the point that in the longer term, could hybrids hinder the opportunity for full electric heating? You could argue this, but I think I would take a more pragmatic view. I think especially if we look at existing on gas buildings, so buildings that currently have natural gas boilers, and look at the rate of change there and how much success there's been for any other low carbon solution, it's very, very low. Moving forward, things may well change. You know, awareness and trust in low carbon solutions will grow. Product prices will come down as these technologies are sold in greater numbers, so the economic propositions can start to look more attractive. I think the biggest challenge is not so much these hard factors, but the soft factors of persuading people to switch from gas boilers. So I think if a hybrid is going to help decarbonising, and if it's a hybrid or nothing, then we would support hybrids being installed. If it's a hybrid or we don't really want to set it up as a battle between an electric heat pump and a hybrid heat pump. I think there's a role for both, and the hybrid system is a pragmatic solution which can tackle a lot of the pain points on the market today. We have to see how strong those pain points still are in 2030, for example. But I think there's still could be longer term opportunities, especially once you move to lower carbon gas, in which case hybrid could be just as low carbon as pure electric.
Yeah,
okay,
that was a good one. On you go, Lindsay.
Yeah, sorry. So somebody's just asked a quick question. In the UK Green Homes Grant, does this include hybrids?
I will need to go away and check the details on that one.
Okay, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that one. Somebody asked quite an interesting question that said, if we are in the future just going to have hydrogen, then why would people not just use a boiler? I think that's a good question to put out there, because that is part of this debate about where we move to in terms of an energy future and options for decarbonising on gas homes. We did some economic modelling under the gas heating service earlier this year, which looked at the economics of alternatives in different sizes of homes, and in terms of what gives the lowest running cost for customers, it quite often comes down to what size of house you're talking about. So if it's a very small property, or a property at least with low thermal demand, then just using a decarbonised gas like hydrogen might well be the most cost efficient option for you. I should have prefaced that by saying that I think we can assume that as we move towards having hydrogen rather than just natural gas, the price of that gas to people is almost certainly going to increase. So at the moment, gas is quite a cheap option for heating in many homes, as Lindsay talked about right at the start. If we move towards having decarbonised gases like hydrogen, certainly like more hydrogen, the cost of gas is going to rise. So it will be in people's interests to try and use less of it. So as I said, in smaller homes that have a small thermal demand, maybe it'll be okay for them to stay with a gas boiler, even though that gas is more expensive, because overall they don't need to consume many kilowatt hours of it over the year. For larger homes, as you move up through the thermal demand, then getting a more efficient system overall, so moving more and more of the heat load towards something that's very high efficiency, like a heat pump, will become more beneficial to people. So I think you're going to see a spectrum of options in terms of what's the best for end users.
Yeah. Another point to add to that, in terms of decarbonised gas, there is you could argue, if the gas grid is going to be 100% hydrogen, we're not saying that it will be 100% hydrogen, but just in a world where it was, why wouldn't people just use hydrogen boilers? I think when we do have something like hydrogen available, there's going to be a lot of competition for which applications get to use it. So there's definitely going to be an argument for solutions which can use it as efficiently as possible. And a hybrid heat pump, equally something like a gas heat pump or a micro CHP unit, these are all ways to use hydrogen potentially in a more efficient way than a gas boiler, so using less of it. So this could also be a reason. Okay, there's another interesting question here. In Europe, except for hybrids, what is the potential to decarbonise on the gas grid before 2030? This is a good question. I think we made the point that to date there's been very little progress in terms of decarbonising on the gas grid. I think it's a good question because there's not that many obvious solutions. I would point to things like gas heat pumps, to micro CHP, for example, other high efficiency gas solutions. But when you compare where those technologies are in the market today, compared with, for example, electric heat pumps, they're very small. They're selling in, I think the installed base is kind of hundreds of thousands. There's about 15 million heat pumps and more than 100 million boilers. So these technologies are still very small. Some of them, for example, gas heat pumps, there's more activity in the commercial sector. I think this could be quite a good solution for the commercial sector. There's not that many residential scale solutions. So I think if you go for pure electric solutions like heat pumps, there's no reason technically why they can't displace gas. I think it's all about the soft factors and getting the economics to stack up. And to date, there hasn't been much evidence that this can happen. You know, by 2030, perhaps if you have the gas and electricity price ratios looking differently, things might look different. I think in France we see this happening a bit, where gas and electricity price ratios are different, and you do see electric heat pumps displacing some gas boilers. So there's a lot of different ways you could answer that question.
That was great. Lindsay, we've got one more I think maybe we could squeeze in. Someone's asked, would we think there could be potential for a hybrid system for a house where the heat pump does the space heating and you have either a gas boiler or a gas water heater of some kind providing the hot water? I think that's a really good question. It's a good option for some houses. We see this happening already in Germany in some blocks of new build blocks of flats, that you have hybrids providing low temperature space heating, and then to provide enough hot water at high enough temperatures to combat Legionella disease and to be able to provide the volumes required, then they have a gas heater. And Lindsay, I think you found something in the UK recently similar, didn't you, where it was an air heat pump providing space heating and cooling, and a gas boiler doing hot water for new build multifamily homes. That was right, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we do see this pattern in a few markets. You also see it in France, kind of more and more kind of collective solutions where you may have a gas or another type of system doing the hydronic part of the system, so the hot water, and then you have like an air-based solution doing heating and cooling. So especially once you get into bigger buildings, you know, if we think about our definition of hybrid in a slightly different way, then yes, I think there's lots of potential for these types of solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the interest of time, I can see there's still a lot of other questions. If we haven't had a chance to answer your question in the webinar just now, then we will get back to you. And anyone who has other questions, please feel free to drop us an email as well. Thanks very much for joining the webinar, and we look forward to keeping in touch with all of you going forward.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.